On March 15th, 2024, Doors received its backdoor update. This update introduced a new sublevel, that being the backdoor, as well as a ton of new entities which you can encounter in this never-seen-before area. However, something which tends to be overlooked by the majority of players is that in addition to adding a brand new area with its own challenges to the game, this update introduced probably the biggest mystery the game has ever seen, at least in terms of its overall lore. This mystery consists of a single word, one word, something which seemingly has no importance yet has major implications if looked at through a different view. Additionally, it is heavily debated among the theorizing community on what the correct solution to this mystery is. So today, I thought I would toss my hat into the ring. In this video, we'll be discussing the true identity of she in Roblox stores. With all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so for some context, one of the new entities added to the backdoor update was Blitz. This character is a frequent challenge you will face in the sublevel, and functionally they are a somewhat harder variant of Rush, as they are able to rebound but not as frequently as Ambush. Now, this character itself isn't the so-called biggest mystery in the game, but rather what Curious Light says after you die to it is. You see, unlike the hotel, whenever you die to an entity in the backdoor, you will be met by Curious Light rather than Guiding Light, and this is important for one key thing. Guiding Light is typically very helpful, and strictly only provides information on the entity you die to whilst periodically giving encouragement to keep trying. Curious Light, on the other hand, is much less helpful in terms of giving useful information about entities, however, they do show more emotion, and this makes them optimal for figuring out lore. You see, when you die to Blitz for the first time, Curious Light will state how she said that we should call the entity Blitz. Now, this is interesting, as so far in the story of Doors there has never been confirmed female character, and this one happens to know Curious Light, which means they have to be important somehow. Now, that is all the information we have on this mysterious she character, and I think you can see why it is such a big question on who their identity is, as well as how there could be many different theories about them. So, with all of that information out of the way, how can we figure out who the she character is? Well, right off the bat, it is almost certain that the she character is one of the light characters. You see, there are 3 light characters in total. There's Guiding Light, Curious Light, and a third red light which hasn't been formally introduced in the game yet. If you'd like to learn more about that third light, I suggest you take a look at my theory video about them, which is linked in the description. Anyways, going back to how she is one of the light characters, the reason why this is almost certainly the case is that they are the only characters in the game which possess some form of intelligence and don't have confirmed genders. Most of the entities in the game are just bloodthirsty monsters with no thoughts, and all the entities in Jeff's shop identify as males. Furthermore, the light characters are shown to be very powerful beings, so I think it would make sense if they are able to contact each other. So, with all of that out of the way, which light character could this she be? Well, there have been many theories for both Guiding Light as well as the third red light. For example, the game theorists believe that it's the third red light because, well, honestly, I'm not even sure why, they just kinda said it was and didn't elaborate. Anyways, upon closer inspection of both of these contenders, you'll start to notice how one is more likely to be she than the other. Like I had stated previously, seeing as how both of them are light characters, it means that they are likely in contact with Curious Light, as they probably share the same high power and abilities. However, if we take a look at more of Curious Light's dialogue, it could help us narrow down the options. For one, when you die to the Lookman for the first time, Curious Light will reference I, stating how both entities function similarly. This means that Curious Light possesses some knowledge of the hotel. Additionally, when you die in the vacuum for the second time, Curious Light will state how they were told that humans need oxygen to survive, and the vacuum has none of that. This brings up the question of who told Curious Light this, and how they know about what humans need to survive. Well, I believe that the person who's giving information about the hotel as well as the player to Curious Light is the same she person I've been talking about. And I think this because it would make sense for the one person to have been talking to Curious Light also to have given them additional information other than an entity name suggestion. So, with that new information in mind, who could this she be? Again, remember how they were likely informing Curious Light about the player as well as the hotel, so they would need knowledge of both in order to actually pass on that information to someone else. Now, the obvious answer for who she is would be Guiding Light. After all, they do know a lot about the hotel and the entities which reside in it, and they seem to know a lot about the player, given how they follow and will guide them throughout the hotel, likely collecting information on them in the process. However, although me stating that Guiding Light is the she character would be really easy and nice, there's a major problem with this theory. You see, Guiding Light isn't the only light character which resides in the hotel. In fact, it is pretty safe to say that all of them do. We know Curious Light can access the hotel as they have been seen hovering near the room's entrance. However, based on how they need to be informed by someone else how the player needs oxygen to survive, it appears that they don't really pay attention to us until we actually enter their sublevels. As for the third light, although they aren't physically shown off in the hotel, it is widely believed that they overpower the crucifix whenever the item is used on Seeker figure, which would explain why it turns red, as that is the color of the light. Now, seeing as how the crucifix gets overpowered fairly quickly, I think it is pretty safe to say that the third light is also observing the player and their actions. However, they aren't as direct as Guiding Light. So, with all of that being said, we still can't confidently say who she is. However, although that may be the case, I do have one more trick up my sleeve which may sway the results. You see, we know that although Guiding Light is rooting for the player to succeed, the third light is likely rooting against them. Again, if you'd like a more in-depth explanation onto why that is, check out the video in the description. Anyways, with this in mind, I believe that it is more likely for she to be Guiding Light rather than the third light. You see, Curious Light, although a lot more vague in their dialogue, generally wants the player to succeed. After all, they do want us to always come back and try to beat the rooms whenever we die. So, if we go back to how the she character is likely informing Curious Light about the hotel and the player, knowing that they will likely use that information to help us, I think that it is out of the third light's interest to be the informant. After all, they are against the player succeeding, so why would they help Curious Light, help us? Meanwhile, Guiding Light is all for the player winning, so I wouldn't think it would be too out of the ordinary for them to aid us in succeeding in sublevels where they aren't physically present. Although, like I had stated before, there really isn't enough information in the game to draw whether it is Guiding Light or the third light who's the she character. After all, my theory that it is Guiding Light is mostly based on how there is another character who's informing Curious Light about the player in the hotel, and I believe that they are the same person as the she character. If both characters aren't the same person, then that kind of shatters this whole theory. However, there isn't really much evidence supporting or going against it, so I guess I'll just roll with it. So, in conclusion, although we can't say for sure who the she character is, I'm pretty confident that it is Guiding Light, based on the evidence presented to us in the game. If this does happen to be true in the end, then it means that Guiding Light and Curious Light are working together to help us, which I think is pretty cool. It also means that Guiding Light is a female, which is a fun piece of trivia. Anyways, let me know in the comments what your theories are over this topic. With all of that being said, thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.